Episode 1 of RWBY Volume 7 has been out for long enough now that I think it's finally about time we talk about Penny, and what exactly her fate's going to be throughout the arc of Atlas. Which, if I'm being completely honest, doesn't really look that promising. But before we get into that, I will say spoiler warning for those who have not seen Episode 2 of RWBY Volume 7 just yet, as I will be discussing a couple of the events that happen within that episode during this video, so just a fair warning on that. Now, there are three general options that I see happening to Penny throughout the arc of Atlas, the first of which being the one that I think is the least likely, but also the one I kind of hope happens considering Penny was just reintroduced into the series. And that's, of course, that nothing really that bad happens to Penny throughout the arc of Atlas. She's able to fight alongside Team RWBY against the threats that are posed to Atlas, and by the end of the Atlas arc, she's able to stay alive, fight alongside either Team RWBY and join up with them, or stick with the remnants of whatever's left of the Kingdom of Atlas and help rebuild it from there, because let's be real, Atlas is not going to be looking too good after all this is said and done. But I really don't see that outcome happening for Penny, because the other two options I see as a lot more likely really don't have the best outcomes for her. One of which, where she's most likely going to be dead and not return, and the last that I'm going to discuss being that there's absolutely no way she's coming back afterwards. So let's go over this first one first. And that's one that people have been theorizing about since Penny's return in Episode 1 of RWBY Volume 7. That is, that Watts is going to take control of Penny. And if that's going to happen, it will end up that Penny is going to have to square off against RWBY. And most likely, RWBY is going to have to put down her friend that she was just reunited with. Which is not going to be a very good situation, but is going to be necessary with the upgrades that Penny has. You know, she's able to fly all the way around Mantle to defend it, considering she seems to be the sole effective defender, not to mention the upgrades she's gotten to her weaponry, able to blast off many lasers to a much higher degree than she was able to back at Beacon Academy. So yeah, she's a powerhouse in and of herself that I don't think you'd really be able to restrain that easily, so it would end up that RWBY, or Team RWBY, if they end up fighting her, are probably going to have to put her down. But if that's the case, then it's possible that she could be rebuilt, right? Well, if Watts is able to take control of her in some way, he's probably going to hack her core to a point that if she does end up being destroyed, her core will be irreparably damaged, because if that weapon was able to fight against Salem, it poses a huge threat as well. So either take out Penny so that she's not a threat to Salem anymore, or at least turn her and have her fight as a tool for Salem, but if that's not possible, then destroy her. Now, there's a couple ways that Watts could be able to take control of her. One thing that I've seen people theorizing is that he's already done it back in Volume 3. Now, the virus that he uploaded to the Atlas network, I guess I should call it, that took control of all of the Atlas ships as well as all of the foot soldiers, the mechanical foot soldiers that is, it didn't reach Penny, because Penny was already deactivated at that point, not to mention I don't think she was connected to the overall Atlas network. I feel like she was an independent operating machine at that point, so I don't think she was that connected, but it would be possible if Watts was somehow in the Kingdom of Vale at that time, and was able to gain access to Amity Coliseum, you know, be able to hack Penny at that point. I honestly don't see that happening. I don't think Watts has done it already, but in Episode 2 of RWBY Volume 7, we were shown just how much control Watts has over the technology that is in Atlas. We find out that he has written the security code that Atlas operates under, and although Atlas itself had upgraded that code, the Kingdom of Mantle did not have their code upgraded. So, with the click of a button, Watts is able to manipulate literally any technology he wants to around the city, able to change walk signals at will, activate defenses so much so that he can just walk across a street, raise a barrier, and cause cars to crash into it so it don't hit him, and he can cause absolute chaos throughout the city. And not to mention, he can also seemingly deactivate all cameras within the city, or choose specific cameras, I don't know exactly how that works, whenever he wants to, so that he and Tyrion can walk throughout the city completely undetected and however they want. Now, I honestly don't think that he's going to be able to just click the button and be able to take control of Penny or manipulate her in any way, but it could maybe interfere with some of her programming. He did say that he designed Atlas security code, and since it was just beefed up, I'm sure he could find a way through it fairly easily, but I don't necessarily know if he's just going to be able to do it with a click of a button. It's just a little too convenient. Though, we do know that Pietro is in Mantle currently, as is Watts. So, with that being the case, and that probably being Penny's home base currently, I feel like Watts could either take Pietro hostage and gain access to Penny that way, because Penny would obviously want to protect her father, or Watts would gain access to Atlas and gain access to the research facility that first developed Penny, because let's be real, she wasn't first developed in Mantle, it was in Atlas. So if he gets access to that, maybe he'd be able to find access to her core mainframe, etc. But if he gets access to her core, then, you know, it's probably gonna be game over, and he's gonna make it so Penny's irreparably damaged. But if Penny is destroyed, there is the possibility that she's rebuilt. The second option, though, that doesn't really have very good turnout for Penny, is something that was introduced in Episode 2 of RWBY Volume 7. The return of Amity Coliseum. We know that Amity Coliseum is going to be launched into the atmosphere to act as a satellite and replace the beacon that was lost at Beacon Academy, to restore global communications across Remnant. And it's going to be so effective that, well, if any of the other towers at Haven Academy, Shade Academy, or at Atlas are knocked out, this one satellite can still support global communications for all of Remnant regardless, which is something pretty damn important. Now, it's always possible that Watts is just going to try to hack into this satellite so he can gain access to this global communications. I think it's a lot more likely that he's just going to try to straight up destroy it and hack it so it falls out of the sky so that, well, global communications can stay disrupted. Salem's faction went to a lot of effort to disrupt global communications to begin with, cause this mass panic. So if global communications are restored, even if they have access to it, it doesn't really make much sense. So if Watts was able to hack its core or its ability to output energy and cause it to crash from the sky after it is launched and prepared to go to the atmosphere, well, if it crashed into Atlas or Mantle, that would be very catastrophic, not to mention it would also mean the death of this entire project that Ironwood, Penny, and Winter are all supporting. So what I see happening is that Penny is going to sacrifice herself to save Amity Coliseum, to restore global communications by sacrificing her own core. Because let's be real, the core that Penny has contains a lot of energy, because the amount of energy output that this little robot has, the ability to fly, the massive amounts of lasers that we saw just in Episode 1, you know, that would require a ton of energy. We don't exactly know what she's running off of. Obviously, probably some kind of dust, but beyond that, how does it support a soul? How does it support an aura? Does Penny even have a semblance? We don't actually know, I don't think. So there's this core that she has is very powerful. So also there's the possibility that Watts would want to gain access to that technology to reproduce his own, but Penny's core could probably act as a replacement for the core of Amity Coliseum should it be damaged or hacked or whatever. And I see Penny sacrificing herself to replace that to ensure the success of the project. Maybe her entire body is going to have to access as the core, to access as a link between two wires or something like that, where she's going to have to sacrifice herself so this succeeds. And if that's the case, then her core and her technology is going to be up in the atmosphere with the Amity Coliseum, and she's not going to be able to be rebuilt, especially not the same Penny that we know now. Because there's a reason Penny hasn't been mass-produced, or there at least hasn't been another Penny created. There is something about her technology, probably the fact that an aura is put into a synthetic body, that can't be reproduced that easily. Maybe it's ethical issues, maybe it's actual technological issues, but there's a reason this hasn't been mass-produced. And with the amount of power that Penny has, I really see this as happening, because Amity Coliseum, getting that into the atmosphere, is going to be pretty much the plot of Volume 7, which then, I mean, think is going to lead into the overall battle, that Salem is going to lead her army of Grimm in Volume 8, then we get Cinder, Neo, and all of the things that are happening with that. So it's going to be Tyrion and Watts versus Robin Hill, Ironwood, Team RWBY, and everyone trying to get Amity Coliseum into the atmosphere. But yeah, those are my 3 ideas as for what's going to happen to Penny. One being, you know, nothing bad happens to her, which is probably not going to happen. Watts hacks her, or Penny is going to have to sacrifice herself. Both of those options not really promising for Penny surviving further into the series beyond Atlas. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do my ideas make sense as to what Penny's fate is going to be in Atlas? Do you agree that it doesn't really look that promising? Do you think that Watts will end up taking control of her, or that she'll end up sacrificing herself for Amity Coliseum? Heck, it honestly could be both. Watts could take control of her, she could end up being very damaged before she regains her sense of self, and then she ends up sacrificing herself for Amity Coliseum. Honestly, both are possible. But the fact still remains, I really see that image that we saw in the opening of the volume as a major death flag, as the, you know, stereotypical anime character who smiles at the acceptance of their own death. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you have any other ideas as for what Penny's fate might be in Atlas? I really look forward to hearing what you guys think, so make sure to let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.